One day, while hiking in Japan, when we were camping, I found a large hole, and in it, a book with a cow's head on the cover. It was very old and written in Japanese, so the first thing I did was translate it into English. I will warn you right away that as you read on, you may feel like you are going crazy in a very strange and frightening way. You will be lonely, and all thoughts will be focused on the cow's head alone. Well, let's start. Long ago in 1776, there was a young woman named Hasuchi and her son Asaoka living in Japan. That very cold winter, the two of them had no money, but there was a cow that they had inherited from the deceased father of Kasuti. He bequeathed them to slaughter a cow in such a way as to keep warm and sleep in it in winter at the same time. The old man strictly forbade doing the same in the summer, otherwise his daughter and grandson would face trouble. Masaoka and Hasuchi, the happy owners of the cow, finally slaughtered the animal, making a neat cut with precise blows. They then made a large hole in the cow's head, widened it through the nostrils, and pulled out the animal's eyes. After that, the heads of the mother and son could already fit inside the body of a cow. They cut off the legs and tail of the animal, cleaned it from the inside, and put fox fur there, turning the inside of the cow into a cozy bed. Hasuchi and Masaoka lived in a very cold hut, where nothing could warm them except a cow. In winter, mother and son crawled inside the body of a cow, where they were warm and pleasant. In the summer, there was usually no need for this method, since in Japan, this time of the year it is hot and sultry. During the winter months, the cow helped Masaoka and Asuti survive, and they even allowed their old neighbor to keep warm for a fee. But one summer day, a blowing breeze made them both shiver from the cold. The mother and son, fearing hypothermia, forgot about all the prohibitions and climbed into the body of a cow. Boom! They lost consciousness. When they woke up, they realized that their hut had been blown away by the wind along with a huge thundercloud. Looking up at the sky, Hasuchi saw the ghost of her father. "You disobeyed me, and now my soul belongs to the devil," he shouted in a rage. "Now I can't repay the debt to Satan. Terrible things will happen to you." The ghost raised his index finger to the sky, and the answer was a lightning strike. And along with thunder and lightning, a small group of local residents appeared. Hasuchi screamed and tried to hide herself, and Masaoka deeper into the body of the cow from the approaching people. She heard her father point the crowd at her and son. She held Masaoka close to her, and the tears rolled down her face in a hail more and more with each step of these people. They came closer and closer until they stopped next to each other. Hasuchi peered out through a small hole in the cow's skin and saw a huge man with an axe standing nearby. He smiled broadly. She covered her mouth with her hands and screamed, at the same time trying to hide away in the cow's head. The woman thought that the man would dot where exactly to hit with an axe, because the body of the cow was large and wide, but he simply looked inside the animal's head, where for a moment he saw a glimpse of eyes staring straight at him. Masaoka was terribly frightened by what had happened. He managed to escape through the neck of the cow and quickly ran into the forest. The boy's clothes were all soaked with fresh blood. The assembled crowd was very hungry, but on that day they would have been satisfied with everything, both human meat and beef. They were lucky because the cow was right in front of them, so everyone cut off a large piece of meat for themselves. On the same night, a man with an axe, panting, broke into his own house. He grabbed his throat and coughed endlessly. His wife raised a cry and called all his friends into the house. The newcomers surrounded the man, who lay dying on the floor, but he suddenly opened his eyes while they were completely red. The man jumped up to one of his comrades and coughed up some kind of black and white ball. Right in the face, it turned out to be a cow's head. Sorry guys, but I'd rather write like this than paste what was in the original, was all the victim managed to say. Everyone in the house screamed loudly. The head of the cow rotated violently on the floor, then began to rise higher and higher in the air until it landed on the head of one of the friends who had come. He yelled for help as the cow's head turned to face him, opened its mouth and swallowed the man whole. No one wanted to be next, so everyone in the house ran outside, leaving the man with the axe with which he had recently beheaded Hasuchi alone. Suddenly, the door swung open wide, Hasuchi's headless body bursting in, her hand holding Masaoka's throat. The boy heard his mother whisper, "You ran away. I loved you, and you betrayed me. Why didn't you just die next to your mom?" Masaoka screamed and breathlessly croaked, I didn't want to die." Immediately, as if out of nowhere, an axe appeared in Hasuchi's hand. "Now you will die just like me, and you'll be next." She paused before turning to her killer. "Yes, you're next, Kampikoka." Crying hysterically, the man could only ask, "How do you know my name?" "I know everything. The power of the ka gave me knowledge," answered Hasuti, and at the same moment, a flashing axe cut off Masaoka's head. Having done so, the woman kicked her son's head towards the cow's head before throwing Masaoka's body into the sand. The cow's head, jumping, approached Tabo's head and swallowed it whole. After that, the cow's head began to shake and rotate until it completely stopped. "That's more than enough to live on," croaked the cow's head. "Your body will now be mine." She rose into the air again and fell on Hasuchi. The dead body of a woman fell to the floor, while suddenly a replica of Hasuchi appeared slightly to the side of the corpse. The cow's head was gone, but soon reappeared next to the revived copy of Hasuchi. She then lifted her cow's head and, seeing blood dripping from the animal's mouth onto her chest, the woman flew out of the house and rose into the sky, from where she landed in a completely different country. She is still alive with her cow head, and one day, if you're not lucky, the person who met her again will be you. Be careful or she will kill you with an axe. To this day, the Alice murders remain an unsolved mystery in Japan. Between 1999 and 2005, there was a series of 5 murders, after each of which the killer left an ominous sign at the scene of the crime. The first victim was Sasaki Megami, a 29-year-old woman who owned the restaurant. Those who knew her described her as strong-willed, quick-tempered, and sharp-tongued when interacting with her employees. She was known for being an excellent cook and dedicated to her work. One night, Megami attended a party at her friend's house and then decided to return home. According to eyewitnesses, she was too drunk to drive, but even after several people offered to drive her, she refused. She left the party at 1 a.m. This was the last time she was seen alive. The next morning, the couple were walking in the woods, about a mile from Megami's house, when they came across a huge blood stain on the overgrown path. They followed the trail of blood and found Megami's body. She was torn apart, and various parts of her body were hanging here and there on the branches of trees. The police found a playing card in Megami's mouth. It was the Jack of Spades, which had Alice written on it. The second victim was a young man named Yamane Akio. He was a singer in an obscure band that mostly played in bars and parties. Friends described him as a kind-hearted man who never raised his voice. Off stage, after his death, his band broke up. Not wanting to find a new vocalist, Akio was abducted from his apartment in February 2001. His bandmates were the last to see him alive earlier on the day of his disappearance. He had rehearsed with them in the evening. His girlfriend came to him and was surprised not to find him at home. A few days later, she reported the disappearance of a person, and the search for Akio began. When the police examined the security camera installed in the building where Yamane Akio lived, they were shocked to see a man with a hood on his head enter the side door of the apartment. A few minutes later, a man emerged from the building carrying a white garbage bag that was bulging strangely. The stranger could not be identified, as his face was completely hidden. A week later, in a bar where Akio's group often performed, the owner of the bar opened the establishment in the morning and discovered a terrible find. Akio's body sat at one of the tables. His throat was torn open, and he was shot in the head. His hand was clutching a card with a diamond. King. The third victim was a teenage girl named Kaisakura. She was a sweet girl who was loved by classmates and relatives and seemed to have a long, happy life ahead of her. She wanted to go to college to train as a fashion designer, and she was only a week away from graduating from high school. When she went missing, Sakura's family went berserk with worry, and every member of the family scoured literally the entire city, trying to find the missing girl. Her body was discovered 2 days later, buried in a shallow grave. The killer marked her grave by sticking a large stick in it, with a playing card glued to it. It was the Lady of the Cross. Sakura's body was horribly mutilated. Her eyes were gouged out, her tongue was cut out, and her skin was flayed alive. She also had a crown sewn to her head, and on her body was a note written in a strange cursive handwriting. It contained many cryptic and incoherent phrases, such as "death is a distorted dream," "she will always rule," and "he who died is lucky." The last victims were Oshiro's brother and sister, a girl named Hina, and her younger brother Hayato. They were very close and rarely fought. Hina was stubborn and Hayato was a very smart boy. On April 4th, 2005, both children were found dead in their beds with punctures in their arms. The window to their room was open, and the police found that the killer entered their house unnoticed, gave them a lethal injection, and then again disappeared unnoticed. Each child had a half-and half card from the Ace of Hearts inserted into their hand, by combining which it was possible to read the word Alice. The only evidence of a crime was a vague mark on the carpet. A year later, unable to bear the mental anguish, the mother of the children committed suicide. My father almost went crazy and spent many years in a psychiatric hospital. Shortly after the death of Oshiro's children, a homeless man named Suzuko Yudo was arrested on suspicion of the murders. He had mental problems in the past and stated that he did not remember what was happening to him at the time of the murders. The main evidence of his involvement in the crimes was the coat he was wearing, which, as it turned out, belonged to Yamane Akio. Examination confirmed that the red spots on this coat are Akio's blood. When the police pinned him against the wall, after presenting this evidence to him, Yudo began to rave that the coat had been given to him by a demon man dressed in black, who had no face. In the end, the police were forced to release Yudo when there were numerous witnesses that he was in an orphanage 5 miles from the place where Sakura's murder took place at night. Police have not been able to find any other suspects, and the case remains unsolved.